It had never been done before, and people forget what that's like.
This was going to be unbounded in terms of the applications.
It had the potential for really revolutionizing the computing industry.
People very often ask, did you visualize all this? Did you plan it? Oh.
No one had any idea how pervasive it would be. Let us build a network and let that be the future of scientific computing.
The start of all of this is that if you work on your computer and I work on my computer and you and I have to solve a problem together, wouldn't it be nice if my computer was connected to your computer?
There was this organization in the government called ARPA that was interested in computer networking.
The Advanced Research Projects Agency is directed to moving technology in areas that are important to national security.
In those days, ARPA was in the Pentagon, all of it, not his contractors, but all the staff. There was a man hired, Alabama Licklider, and it was his dream to tie the world together with computers. His idea was very different. The machines, as you said, used to be very big. You never touched one, and you talked to a programmer. Licklider's idea was radically different. He wanted close interaction between the individual researcher and the computer.
Licklider had managed to convince a lot of people that this was a good idea, and Charlie was persuaded that building a network for the research community was actually a good thing for a variety of reasons. Sharing computer resources was a motivation, but DARPA also understood that if this was successful, it would probably make a difference to the Defense Department and its operation in the future.
In 1962, a nuclear confrontation seemed imminent. The United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, were embroiled in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Both were in the process of building hair-trigger nuclear ballistic missile systems. Each country pondered post-nuclear attack scenarios. US authorities considered ways to communicate in the aftermath of a nuclear attack. How could any sort of command and control network survive? Paul BARAN, a researcher at RAND, offered a solution: design a more robust communications network using redundancy and digital technology. RAND Corporation is an American non-profit global policy think tank created in 1948 by Douglas Aircraft Company, financed by the US government and private individuals. Its main role was to offer research and analysis to the United States Armed Forces. At the time, naysayers dismissed BARAN's idea as unfeasible. But working with colleagues at RAND, BARAN persisted. This effort would eventually become the foundation for the World Wide Web. BARAN was born in Poland in 1926. In 1928, his family moved to the United States. He attended Drexel University, where he earned a degree in electrical engineering. Afterward, BARAN moved to Los Angeles, where he worked for the Hughes Aircraft Company. Taking night classes at UCLA, he earned an engineering master's degree in 1959, the same year he joined RAND. At that time, RAND focused mostly on Cold War-related military issues. A looming concern was that neither the long-distance telephone plant, nor the basic military command and control network, would survive a nuclear attack. Although most of the links would be undamaged, the centralized switching facilities would be destroyed by enemy weapons. Consequently, BARAN conceived a system that had no centralized switches and could operate even if many of its links and switching nodes had been destroyed. BARAN envisioned a network of unmanned nodes that would act as switches, routing information from one node to another to their final destinations. The nodes would use a scheme he called hot potato routing or distributed communications. Communications networks centralized, distributed packet switching. BARAN also developed the concept of dividing information into message blocks before sending them out across the network. Each block would be sent separately and rejoined into a whole when they were received at their destination. A British man named Donald Davis independently devised a very similar system, but he called the message blocks packets, a term that was eventually adopted instead of BARAN's message blocks. This method of packet switching is a rapid store and forward design. When a node receives a packet, it stores it, determines the best route to its destination, and sends it to the next node on that path. If there was a problem with a node, or if it had been destroyed, packets would simply be routed around it.
BARAN's vision of the future. In an interview with Wired magazine, BARAN discussed his vision of how the new technology might be used. Around December 1966, I presented a paper at the American Marketing Association called Marketing in the Year 2000. I described push and pull communications and how we're going to do our shopping via a television set and a virtual department store. If you want to buy a drill, you click on hardware and that shows tools and you click on that and go deeper. In 1969, this distributed concept was given its first large-scale test, with the first node installed at UCLA and the seventh node at RAND in Santa Monica. Funded by the Advanced Research Projects Agency and called ARPANET, it was intended for scientists and researchers who wanted to share computers remotely. But within 2 years, the network's users had turned it into something unforeseen, a high-speed, electronic post office for exchanging technical and personal information. In 1983, the rapidly expanding network broke off from its military part, which became Milnet. The remainder became what was called ARPANET. In 1989, the ARPANET moniker was retired in favor of the Internet, which had also been described as the information superhighway. BARAN left RAND in 1968 to co-found the Institute for the Future, a non-profit research group specializing in long-range forecasting. He also started 7 companies, 5 of which eventually became publicly traded companies. He remained an active supporter of RAND and its alumni association until he died in 2011. On Distributed Communications Series. While working at RAND on a scheme for U.S. telecommunications infrastructure to survive a first strike, Paul BARAN conceived of the Internet and digital packet switching, the Internet's underlying data communications technology. His concepts are still employed today, just the terms are different. His seminal work first appeared in a series of RAND studies published between 1960 and 1962 and then finally in the tome on distributed communications, published in 1964.
It was plausible, it was interesting. In my view, it was almost certainly doable. And so it came.
The ARPA office had moved from the Pentagon, where it had been in the late 60s, to 1400 Wilson Boulevard.
It's a loss for the Pentagon to not have the technical people within easy walking distance. ARPA in those days made the computer science community and funded it and made it function.
The summer of 1968, DARPA actually put out a request for quotations, RFQ, asking for proposals to build a 4-node packet switch net. So a lot of the ideas that I've been working on were embedded in that RFQ.
There's an invention that Kahn triggered, and he and Vint Cerf made it together, and that's the Internet protocols, without which nothing would work, and with it, just about everything works. It was, I think, the single largest engineering invention of the 20th century.
Internet protocols, which I developed along with my colleague Vint Cerf, were really what enabled this whole collection of worldwide components to work together seamlessly.
The ARPANET was developed by a virtual organization. It was 6 or 8 different universities spread around the country, and graduate students who are the real heroes of the ARPANET.
At the beginning of 1969, they started to build this network, and the first node was going to be at UCLA in September 1969. Graduate students and the other staff members got together, called together in one meeting, and then we initiated a series of meetings ourselves to sketch out what to do with this network. That led to the creation of a set of documents which we called requests for comments as a deliberate ploy to make it clear that the door was open, but they were in fact the way in which we documented the designs and the standards that we had come up with.
Steve Crocker was one of a small team who installed the first IMP, that is, got it running.
I was in the group that was getting favored with this present, if you will. It was a sort of a gift from on high that couldn't be refused. You're going to be connected.
The first connection over the ARPANET happened after I was gone. Steve Lukasik called me for the story. We connected. It failed. It disconnected right away, but I said, well, that's what it's like to be first on the block.
This is really working. Now, not that this is good if it worked. This is really working.
The youngest guy in our group, Charlie Klein, was given the task of sitting down and typing the characters, and he tried to type login, Login, as the initiation, and after 2 or 3 characters, the connection died and all the software broke, and we had to go back to the drawing boards for a short while. That was the Watson moment of something historic. It was absolutely clear that it was going to work.
The basic idea of computers interacting with computers really was a result of the original ARPANET, where it showed that that was possible.
This network really was terrific for joint problem solving. So the whole thing began to spread sort of by example. The limit that's there is not in the science, in the technology, in the hardware, and the software. The limit is up here. It's by no means at its end. It's by no means at a plateau. I think it has a long way to go. A very long way to go.
An area that I think is going to be extremely important for the future is that of understanding how best to use the internet to manage information.
When I was a kid, I wanted 2 miracle things. I wanted a library that had every book in it, and I wanted a magic carpet that would take me anywhere. And I'm pretty close.
I mean, I think it's an amazing thing, and I've been so close to it, and I'm still amazed by it.